support for Israel's military actions in Gaza.
Okay, Zumbi, following your survey of Arab Americans, you said that President Biden's popularity among Arab and Muslim Americans has significantly dropped over his policy in Gaza. How would that impact his re-election campaign?
It will impact it quite seriously. The fact is that polls showed a drop from 59% support in 2020 to 17% now. That was done in October, and I'm sure the numbers have not improved, but they may have worsened since then. The fact is that people are distressed, they're disappointed, and they're angry with the policy of the administration. These people will not vote for Donald Trump, but they will vote either for a third-party candidate or they won't vote at all. It's not only Arab Americans who are affected, but it's also our broader polling shows. It's affecting young people. It's affecting Black, Latino, and Asian voters. It's affecting young progressive Jews. And if you lose 10% of the Black, Latino, and Asian vote in several key states, you cannot win the election. But we showed in Michigan with 101,000 undecided votes, which, by the way, is the margin of victory or defeat for a presidential candidate in that state, is that people didn't want to vote for Joe Biden. And now, while they can dismiss it and say, oh, come November when they have a binary choice between Biden and Trump, they'll vote for Biden because Trump is worse. The reality is that we saw in 2000, we saw in 2016, that people who aren't committed to support you will either vote for a third-party candidate or they won't vote at all. When we got 101,000 votes in Michigan, it wasn't just a choice between Biden and uncommitted. It was a choice between Biden and not voting at all. People had to work hard to get those 101 votes out, and they did. It may not be the same percent in every other state because there isn't the same commitment, there isn't the same organization and infrastructure in place in other states to do what was done in Michigan. But what will happen is that they won't vote at all. The turnout will be much lower. And Biden can't afford a low turnout if he's going to win this election. Trump has energy behind his campaign. Biden doesn't have energy right now behind his campaign. And if you lose the Arab vote in Michigan, if you lose some percentage of Black, Latino, Asian voters, young voters in other states, it's going to be a problem. And the Biden campaign has to recognize that and do something about it.
That was James Zogby, president of the Arab American Institute in Washington. He was speaking with my colleague Mohammed Al-Shinawi. The war in Gaza, which began October 7th when Hamas militants attacked Israel, has led to more than 30,000 deaths in Gaza. Hamas still holds more than 100 Israeli hostages taken in its initial attack, which killed about 1,200 people. When Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019, he was lauded as a regional peacemaker. Now, according to David Monda, professor of political science at City University of New York, his reputation as a leader who could unite Ethiopia has deteriorated, and the much heralded peace deal with Eritrea has vanished. The professor also points out to me that Abiy Ahmed is caught in the middle of a protracted civil war which could potentially destabilize not only his government but the wider Horn of Africa region.
My thoughts are I'm very concerned because the image of Prime Minister Abiy in 2019 has really been challenged and compromised by a lot of these reports. Firstly, of a lot of the human rights abuses perpetuated by the Ethiopian army during the Tigray War, and even after the November 2022 peace settlement with the Tigray region, we now have recent reports of massacres this year in the Amhara region, where the Abiy administration is going after the Fano militia in that area. And there have been reports of indiscriminate drone attacks, of mass civilian killings, of abductions and murder. So this really paints the image of Prime Minister Abiy as this reformist. And also, let's not forget that Ethiopia is the seat of the African Union. So it really raises a lot of questions around Ethiopia as a continental leader and as a model for Africa when this kind of things are happening at the seat of the African Union.
I'm glad you mentioned the war in northern Tigray region because when Abiy ordered the military offensive then, he promised that the conflict would be resolved very quickly, but the fighting left thousands dead and forced more than 1.7 million people to flee, and it fueled famine and a rise of a wave of atrocities. And that effect, the professor, is still reverberating right now because Ethiopia is struggling with significant economic, ethnic, and political challenges. So how do you get out of this?
So